Welcome to the Family Legacy Podcast, the podcast that goes beyond legal jargon and gets to the root of how to ensure your past, present, and future are protected. This episode is brought to you by the Rutkowski Law Firm, Michigan's leading asset protection, estate planning, Medicaid, and elder law firm. And here's our host, Michael Rutkowski. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, Kerry, good seeing you again. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Election day.
Tuesday.
This is a big one.
It is a big one. It's a big, important day.
Yeah.
We are recording, folks. You're probably listening to this a few weeks after, but we are recording this on the 5th of November. And did you rock the vote?
That's my plan right after this. So it's it's only in the morning right now. So got to get the kids situated, and then we're heading there right after this. But everyone get out there and do your duty and vote.
In Pennsylvania, and so at the time we were, had to stand in line and you couldn't vote. And then I moved to Washington, and Washington, everything was mail-in, even before COVID. What's it like in Michigan in terms of voting?
Interestingly, I heard a statistic yesterday that already almost 50% of the state has voted through early voting options, absentee ballots, whatever, all those different things. Almost half the state has already voted. So it's crazy. So maybe the lines, fingers crossed, the lines are going to be low.
Yes. Here's a speedy voting day for you. I appreciate it. Let's talk real quick. We'll do a follow-up, folks, once we have more information around who the candidate's going to be and how that's going to impact the state of Michigan and taxes overall. But what are some things we should be on the lookout for in regards to the election and estate planning?
Great question, Kerry. The federal estate tax thing is going to be something we're going to talk about all year. So stay tuned as we update you on that. But that's heavily weighted on what's going on in the White House. So regarding who's elected into the House, and then also on the state level, we have to be aware that there is still a state tax in some states. And so depending on whether that state, changes from Republican to Democratic or whatever happens, there's just going to be a lot of movement this year when it comes to taxes. Another big thing to be mindful of, especially in our elder law and asset protection practice, is just healthcare and long-term care rules. How are people being covered for long-term care? What are our options when it comes to Medicaid, VA and attendance? There's just a lot of moving parts right now, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see how this next, I would say, 3 to 6 months plays out. But this is the place to get your updates. So I hope you guys keep tuning in, and we'll keep you updated as we're hearing whispers of what the changes are going to be.
Okay, so that's really helpful. The other thing that's coming up, because it's November, and by the time people are actually listening to this, it will be kickoff of the holiday season.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. I have to say Thanksgiving's actually my favorite holiday.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the best of all the holidays in terms of amazing food and family without the pressure of the gifts.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's just such a great time.
It is.
Love them both. Probably.
What's one of your traditions?
So in Michigan, Lions football all day long. If you're listening to this in Michigan, we have the football game. So it's always football game, family, overeat, nap on the couch. Typically while the Lions are losing, but you know what? We're turning the corner. We're Super Bowl bound this year. So that's going to be great. That's probably the biggest thing is, what's always hard in having families is just dividing it all up and seeing everyone, right? And so it's kind of like my family does the Thanksgiving side. My wife is more of like the Christmas side. So we've kind of divided up. Fortunately for us, everyone is local, so that's amazing. But it's just getting together with family and just slowing it down. Work slow, but I'm about to tell you it's not here in just a second. Just that week particular, right around Thanksgiving slows down, right around Christmas slows down. But you know what? It's really honestly some of the busiest time of the year for us because everyone's seeing family again. And so often family members get together and we see mom or dad, and we just didn't really know that their health has declined at all until we see them in person. And so we typically have a really big uptick around the holidays in our Medicaid placement practice, elder law, estate planning too, because we're just having those conversations. It's just a really busy time of year for us.
I have to imagine from a Medicaid standpoint that if you have a busy season and everyone's trying to get placed, I mean, that sounds really, really tricky if it's all happening at once. I mean, is that the
It
case?
is.
So if you're saying
Yeah.
estate planning's busy for Medicaid, then my intuition says that part of that challenge is actually getting those family members into a comfortable place where they can be
Yeah.
taken care of.
Yeah, it's a great it's a great point. If family needs help and we're to the level of needing help outside the home, so we're going to maybe move to assisted living, skilled nursing, whatever. If we're private paying, there's all the availability in the world. Most places have rooms or places to go. When we're trying to utilize the VA in attendance or Medicaid benefit, there's only so much funds allocated per location. So you might hear the term like we only have so many Medicaid beds. What they're really saying is we're only allotted, based on our total occupancy, we're only allotted so many state funds and federal funds for the Medicaid to cover someone's care. So they might only have 6 to 8 beds, depending on the size of the facility, or 6 to 8 placements, call it. They don't necessarily have to be beds. They're just acceptable places. But so, yes, you're right. When there's an uptick in the need, then it's harder to find places that we truly love. Because just like in private pay, there's great places and there's places that look like a 1980s nursing home. And so I think Medicaid gets a bad rap because so often people are in such an emergent state to do the planning and there's just not the availability, where if we're kind of aware of this and we know it's coming, we can kind of get on the list at the places near us that we like, that are acceptable to us. So yes, with an uptick in the need, there's going to be less availability. But always know this too, although it can be challenging, you can start somewhere and as soon as the spot becomes available at where you want to eventually be, you can be on their list. So we don't love to move around the elderly or people in need just because it's a lot to them emotionally too. But sometimes, it's what we have to do to finally get our loved one at the place that, we eventually want them at. Does that make sense?
It does. So I have 2 questions for that. One is we're talking about, I'll give you an example. So my grandmother was, she had fallen and broken her, shattered like her whole right side and needed surgery and all sorts. And she was in rehab for that. And then afterwards, she essentially had to move in with my dad because they didn't have anywhere for her to go yet. And it took 2 years to get her into a place for Medicaid and near my dad.
Okay.
And so is that standard or is that just because we were being really, really picky?
And we're talking about Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Okay. So every state is a little bit different. I talk to attorneys around the country and they don't even do Medicaid planning because the state just doesn't have great programs. When it comes to Michigan, I would say 80 to 85% of every place has Medicaid availability. So no, there's really only wait lists that extensive for in-home care Medicaid, which is something in Michigan called MI waiver. So there's long wait lists for that, but usually we can get someone placed almost immediately in a place that accepts Medicaid. And I would say there's a 50% chance that it's where the person wants to be. There's availability.
So you just said we can place them. Are you talking about the law firm helps
Yeah.
find places?
So we actually have social workers on staff that help with the placement. And that's not typical of a law firm. We do it because it's just clients love it. And so we brought on a social worker. We actually have a couple now that help with that part of the process. So not only do we do the legal piece of it to get someone qualified, but then we actually have relationships in the community to help with placement. There's no additional charge for that. It's just something that we feel is kind of necessary because when we started the practice of doing Medicaid and elder law, we used to just do the legal side, and then we'd say, okay, clients, now go find somewhere to go. And they'd be in limbo for like 4 to 6 months trying to figure it out. And so the second someone engages our services, we're already working on the placement, something that's pretty unique to our firm.
I knew that already, but I wanted you to be able to say it to everybody because I think it's pretty magical.
Yeah.
And the team's wonderful. Leah is magical for sure in terms of what she's been able to help people with. Let's talk about order of operations when it comes to this, because as people are listening and they get into the crunch of the holiday season where they are seeing their family and they are noticing that their, older loved ones are having are having some struggles and might need this. Let's talk about what happens. Is it that they need to get placed first? Is it that they need to do the estate planning first? And why do you need estate planning for this at all?
Yeah.
A lot of questions.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to take you one step before that. When you're visiting your loved ones, let's talk through maybe just some simple things you can do to get a gauge of like what's going on around the household. We get a lot of families who will do like an inventory of if still driving. So if your parents are still driving, do a quick once around of the car, go in the car, just kind of see what's happening. We've found a lot of families have noticed damage to the vehicle. So maybe it's at a point in time where we need to take away the keys from mom or dad. That's an important one for not only their safety, but the safety of others. Another good one is do an inventory of the fridge. See what's all expired. That's usually a clear giveaway something's going on when there's like expired milk and expired everything. They're starting to just not take care of themselves as well. Do a little inventory of their medication. Make sure that they're taking it. That's a big one where individuals will stop taking their medication. Not intentionally, they just kind of, lose track of things and whatever. So do a little walkthrough around the house with those kinds of things to get a sense of like, hey, is mom and dad taking care of themselves well enough? Do we need to bring, some help into the home? Because there's so many levels of this. I mean, we could do 5 shows on this of like the levels of care that we can provide to our loved ones. Anything from someone coming in 1 day a week to just do a sweep and clean and see what's going on. If we don't have a loved one local to, full-blown skilled care in a facility. But so that's always great. Just do a once over. You're obviously going to talk to your loved one quite a bit. So you're going to get a good sense of their cognitive abilities. If you notice any changes there, ask them questions, really engage them and ask them, we ask simple questions like, who's the president? That might change today. Well, pretty good.
Paying attention.
But, just engage them to check cognitive ability, do a little once over of the house to see if, everything still seems in order. But that's kind of a great starting point to know if you should start having conversations, because that's the important part is you want to go into it, not in a crisis mode where like, oh my gosh, mom can't take care of herself. And now tomorrow she needs to be in a home. Let's have these conversations. Let's talk to people about what options do we have to pay for care? What are, go meet with different facilities in your area, their area, so you know what you're getting into. That's so much better and a calmer way to do this in advance versus like they fall because they're unable to, really get around and now they cannot return home and they have to be placed. That's just not a great situation for anyone. Does that make sense?
Let's talk about, before we get into the nuts and bolts of it, let's talk for a second about those conversations, because that's tricky business. And, how you approach that's really, it sounds really hard and daunting, especially for the loved one who might need the care, who is a very independent person who maybe doesn't want the care.
I don't know that there's a great way to do it. Having conversations about reducing someone's freedom, taking away their independence, it's just always a tough thing. So, just depending on where it's at, the conversations are always different. If you see a bunch of dings, dents, and everything on mom's car that have happened since the last time you were over, it's probably a good time to just take away the keys. You might just have to tell them you're doing it, that it's never fun. Those things are never fun. what's also important is catching the ability to put in place things like powers of attorney or an estate plan prior to their cognitive ability declining to the point where they can no longer sign legal documents. Because, we've talked about this in the past, but you never want to go down the guardianship route. It's just so much more costly, time consuming for the whole family and everyone involved.
Okay, so let's talk about order of operations now of like what can you do now before you even need to think about the Medicaid side of it. And then once you do need the Medicaid and you do need to get someone placed, what do you need to do first? Get them placed and then do the estate planning, do the estate planning and then get them placed. So, but
Yeah,
first, what
great
can we do
question.
right
I
now?
mean, priority one from my side would be having a solid set of powers of attorney in place. So both a medical and a financial, so that if someone can't help themselves, they've appointed someone else to do it for them. Because with really well drafted powers of attorney, we can do all the Medicaid planning in the world. We can help with everything. We just don't want to get to a point where someone's declined and they can no longer make decisions for themselves or sign legal documents. That's the most important. I mean, obviously we can have conversations all day about trusts and these things and what would happen if mom or dad passed to make sure we avoid probate. But for me, like priority one is getting that person to sign some legal documents so that someone else can help if things get really set. So, that's probably a good starting point is to have those conversations. Obviously, if they're open to it, let's talk about who gets what and all those things after someone passes. But really, those powers of attorney give us the ability to do anything at any time. That's from the legal side.
Yeah.
You should also start, searching the area in which you want mom and dad. If it's closer to a child, go meet with some places around your area. There's actually some really great placement services when we're talking about private pay also that can guide you with all of this. They can tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of all the places in your area. And we'd be happy to share that information, just depending on where you live, we can get you hooked up with someone that's good that can, it's just like anything else. Educating yourself is so powerful in all of this, just to be prepared.
So important to get out in front of it as much as you can.
Yeah.
But we also know that if you're walking into Thanksgiving, you might find some surprises. So let's talk about that.
That's the important thing here is that we're going to be around family. So we're all together. So we can all kind of assess what's going on. There's usually typically a big uptick in demand for estate planners around this time of year because, we're having those, whether mom or dad is declining or not, we're still having those kinds of conversations. Talk to your mom and dad about, what kind of estate planning do they have? Do they have a will or a trust? If they only have a will, the kids are all going to end up in probate, and that's no fun. So be talking to your parents about what estate planning they've done. If they've done some, get the contact information of the attorney that they use so that they can communicate with that law firm after, something goes south. So these are really good conversations while we're watching the Lions win on Thanksgiving Day. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think it's important conversations, and what better time to do it than when we're all together. So, and it doesn't need to be hot and heavy or like making a plan. It's just like, hey, if we thought about these things and what, has anybody done this before and what's your consideration on it? And it's just good to just get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Get the
and
ball
what
rolling.
what it would essentially look like is, scheduling some meetings, schedule a meeting with an estate planning attorney to just go over like, what are our options? Here's what's essentially going on. Every estate planner does typically an initial consultation to see what's happening and, what options do you have? So I think, again, it's like educate yourself. Even if you don't take action today, you at least know like, what's the plan going forward? When do we need to do what? Knowledge is power. And it makes things so much easier on the family.
That it does. And everyone's situation is different. So it's hard for us to sit here today and tell you exactly what to do because it really is, to Michael's point, depends on what you got going on. And you need somebody who can, work with you in regards to what your needs are. Because as we've said, there's lots of options in terms of the types of care you might need, in terms of how you might want to approach the estate planning of what you already have versus what you don't have. So definitely taking that initial call is a great starting point, and we'll be sure to share our details in case you want to give us a call and set that up. Any last words of wisdom here for Michael as people head to their, to watch the Lions and overeat?
What else is which is so beneficial to families, it's just the ability to do Zoom these days. I was just meeting with a family last night where we had 2 people on Zoom. We had mom and daughter in person, and we worked through all these great things, like who's going to hold on to the estate plan, whose roles and responsibilities are, everyone was just so on the same page. And that is just something that didn't happen pre-COVID that I just love, is that when all the family members are part of the meeting, even if they're just listening in to everything that happened, it just makes things so much easier for us, for the family. I just love everyone being on the same page. So take advantage of those options too. Don't feel like you have to wait until everyone's back in town to meet with an estate planner. If you all want to be part of it, you can just, a couple people, typically, I hope, like lawyers can Zoom in a couple people and have some people in person, or do it all by Zoom. It's just great technology that has made estate planning so much better than it used to be. And that's all I got.
I think that's so helpful. I'm here in the UK. My dad and my mom are in Pennsylvania, and I got brothers and sisters all over the country. And so to be able to all get together on the same page over Zoom sounds so helpful. So incredibly helpful. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. If you want to ensure that your estate plan doesn't become an emergency over Thanksgiving and you'd like to get ahead, be sure to give us a call at 248-955-2842. That's 248-955-2842, or you can email mlr@rutkowskilawfirm.com. Before we go, Michael, we got a week here. It's the 5th. We're going to talk again in 7 days. What are you most looking forward to in the next 7 days? Got any weekend plans?
You know what we didn't talk about today? Not so much what I'm looking forward to, but I went to a Michael Jackson show last weekend, and it was incredible. Downtown Detroit at the Fisher Theater. It was awesome. I love Michael Jackson, and it was very cool to watch like his story of his life. So if it comes to a city near you, go check it out. It was great. Other than that, I got dance competitions all weekend, so I'll be dancing.
Yes. Well, you should be inspired after watching the Michael Jackson musical. You got to get your moon dance going.
I've got a cool shirt that says "She gets it from me." Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. I'm so grateful. Michael, thank you again for all your wisdom. Well, you enjoy your weekend, Michael, with all those dance competitions and rocking your Michael Jackson moves, and we'll be seeing you next week. Thank you to our listeners. And if you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share. This episode was brought to you the Rutkowski Law Firm, Michigan's leading asset protection, estate planning, Medicaid, and elder law firm. And again, if you'd like us to help with your estate planning or asset protection needs, please call 248-955-2842. Again, that's 248-955-2842. Thank you again.
All right. Happy holidays, everyone.